This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. The following program is rated PG-13 and contains language and material that may be offensive to some audiences.
I knew these sisters, they were redheads. They lived behind me, and we would play together. It was a good time, our fun was harmless. Now they're just memories of life, how it used to be.
On today's special edition, mobile edition of the Havery Show, we have special guest, my big brother, Peter Asciutto.
Hey, what's up, what's up, what's up?
We are starting today's episode at the old family homestead at 618 South Commerce Avenue. Peter?
Which it used to be 439 South
That's
Commerce
correct.
Avenue, but
That's
at some
right.
point, they changed everything.
That's correct. What else did they change? What did
They changed the phone digit.
and it used to be?
EV5
That's correct.
8297.
And what was the EV for?
Evergreen.
Evergreen.
And I think Avon Park had their own thing, and
Yes,
then
they did.
Lake Placid, I can't remember what they were.
Yep.
Which I knew that about a month ago.
Yep. Well, let's
So-
talk about the old house. What comes to mind when you see the old girl?
Well, it's just memories. Memories of just growing up in Sebring,
Yeah.
in this area. And we talked about this yesterday. Depending on even where you grew up in Sebring, you had different neighborhoods you grew up in, and there were different experiences. I'm kind of here too. We're going to plan for our class of 76 class reunion, or our 50th year class reunion, with some folks, and we all grew up in different areas of the city, and we have different memories. Ours was growing up on South Commerce Street and this area up by the courthouse and everything. But the big thing about here, there used to be houses.
That's right.
And this was our mom was the last resident on South Commerce Avenue.
That's right.
And she passed in 2020. And just a lot of memories here.
She held on to it till the bitter end. She had some really good offers from the county to buy the
Yeah.
house when they wanted to expand parking and whatnot, but she wouldn't have it. She held on tight. So, excuse me. The house was bought in 1966.
Correct.
As the legend has it, my dad and our mom were and maybe some of you kids were driving through Sebring on the way down to South Florida. And they drove by this house. There was a for sale sign. So Ralph, my dad Ralph, got out and was looking at the house, and this little Italian man came over and started talking to him. It turned out to be Frank Cosa. So Frank had the little white frame house right next door, and he had Cosa's grocery store, which is now my recording studio. So Frank had built this house for him and Geraldine, Jerry Cosa, and their kids to live in. There were two daughters and one son, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Don't quote me on that. So on a handshake and a $500 deposit, my mom and dad bought this house from Frank Cosa, and they moved down in, I think, early 1967 or
Somewhere
late
in the
66.
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
around there, give or take. But back then it was kind of a coral pink color.
Pink, yes, very pink in color.
It had a gravel roof, a white gravel roof, and that was genius at the time because it was white, it reflected the heat, but it was also really easy to repair. If there was any kind of a problem with it, you would just go up there with some tar and some more gravel and make the repairs. Very simple stuff. Yeah, what else about the outside?
About the outside, for the winter time, our entire heating system with jalousie windows consisted of, in November, that was a jalousie window front door. My mother would put a plastic waving Santa Claus on there to cut out to give us protection from the cold.
Exactly.
And it stayed up till well after Easter.
It stayed up until the Christmas tree came down.
And the Christmas tree came down way after Easter,
And
almost to the summer.
Part of the reason for that is the tradition at least in New York, where everybody was from except me. I'm from Sebring, born in Avon Park. the tradition was that the Christmas tree didn't go up until Christmas Eve. Santa Claus brought the Christmas tree with all the gifts.
And I can tell you what, real quick, that was wonderful experience. You go to bed, the house looks exactly the same. Then you wake up when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, or even as a kid, and it's just magical with seeing the lights and the gifts and toys for the first time.
Magical at 6, 7, or 8 years old, but still even magical at 18, because I held on to that.
Yeah.
And Peter was pissed at me because of that. And the other,
okay, let me tell you this story. So, as we became reality, and if you're, and actually realized there was for you kids listening, there is a Santa Claus.
Yes, there is.
But for the unreality of us that kind of thought there was never any Santa Claus, we had to become part of the put the tree up when the kids went to bed. So I would say the word shithead right here, but I don't want to cuss on this thing. I never forget, it was me, Shirley, Vinny, Charlie, we're all up. We go to midnight mass, and you can't start till after midnight mass, which is 1 a.m.
That's right.
And he's like laying on the couch and I wonder what Santa's gonna bring this year. And we're like, Harry, time for bed, time to bed. Oh, I don't know. I wonder if Santa's gonna come. We can get the cookies out for him and stuff like that. And then my mom's like, if you ruin the Santa Claus for Harry, I will never speak to y'all again. Yeah. He remembers.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway. But anyway, it was just a lot of memories with the kids. We had the houses. Brian Michael Howes grew up with their grandma across the street here, Paul Luya. And we were one of the first people he met with the DeBoses across the street, which that eventually became a store that I owned,
That's
Sunshine
right.
Sales and Promotion. And the phone number is
385-6699, Sunshine Sales.
Yeah, we had all little commercials when he made movies in high school for us and stuff like that. So just a lot of memories playing over at Ken Wilkinson bought the building over there, and that's where we played sandlot baseball, football, and everything else. So
yeah, it was Joe and Lillian DeBose across the street. And Fitkins, the electronics place, Mr. Fitkins was a man of short stature, but a very, very nice man. He would fix my guitar cables when they would break. I would take them over there and he would solder them and fix them, and he never charged me a nickel for it. He was a very nice man. Now, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Fitkins had this alarm system, and you could go by at night, and people did this at all hours of the night, and you beep your horn or you throw a bottle or you scream, and a light would come on and there would be this, the buzzer. Do you remember that?
yeah.
And at that point, I was sleeping in this front room, and that buzzer would go off at all hours. It drove me crazy. And we also had the Greyhound bus station.
Correct, the whole Greyhound. And for those of y'all from Sebring, I live in Albemarle, North Carolina, so I had to store Vac and Dash. And because we grew up across the street from the Greyhound bus terminal, when I was in high school, you were probably in elementary and middle school and stuff. And there was a pay phone over there. For those y'all younger than 40, that's the little phone in the public where you put a quarter in or a nickel to call people up. They're no longer around, but that never did work. That never did seem to work over there. So people would come by our house all hours of the night, just knocking on the door.
Sometimes not even knocking.
Yeah.
Sometimes just walking in, especially around Christmas.
Could I use your phone?
We'd have the Christmas lights up, and we kept those up a long time too. And some people thought it was a bar.
Thought it was a bar.
Walked right in, like it was nothing.
So that was pretty cool. So in Albemarle, North Carolina, the Greyhound bus station had a big store. The Greyhound asked if we could be a Greyhound bus stop, and just from my experience growing up there, I said, yeah, sure, fine. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, the citizens of Albemarle thought I had a deal with Greyhound bus to bring all the homeless people from Charlotte to Albemarle, North Carolina. That was a whole big thing. It's like, oh, really, people? But anyway, people need a ride, man. People need to get from point A to point B.
Another magical element of living here in this spot, and also living right down the street on Oak Avenue, where I've lived with my family for years, is the seasons. And you can always tell what season it is by the sounds. We don't have the falling leaves, and we don't have snow. We don't have all that. We have other things. So you know it's springtime when you hear the crack of the baseball bat from Fireman's Field. And there's nothing quite like the sound of a ball hitting a bat.
Oh yeah.
And to hear that as part of your spring experience, you could be out, mowing the lawn or working in the yard, and you hear that crack of the bat. And then come fall, you hear the band practicing out on the field, and you hear the drum line. And it's just, wonderful growing up right here in this spot.
Oh yeah, you hear Harold Crenshaw, man, on the little
Yes, the voice of the Blue Streaks.
voice of the Blue
Yep.
Streaks for years
Yep.
and stuff, and then you could hear the thing. If you turn the camera on, you could actually see the lights from the baseball field and the football field from here. That's how close we were. And it's
Yes.
the other thing that amazed me is all the, and if you look behind us, the administrative center is there. This used to be full of houses.
That's right. It was Granny Parnell.
From here to there to everywhere.
Granny Parnell lived next door, and Hobson,
And then
Granny and Hobson, and then the Castles lived next door to them. And then there was the county health building, used to be, right? Remember that? The county health
Yeah.
building was there, and then the Girl Scout
Girl
house.
Scout house. Yeah, and then the Boy Scout house was up there where
That's
we
right.
had bus 33. But anyway, it's just a nice place, and this is where I got my brain damaged when we'd get on our spider bikes in the summertime, and the mosquito truck would
Yes,
go slowly
yes,
up the thing,
yes.
and all of us, the houses, Bill Boyd, Jay Ireland, Steve Whitney, we would get on our bikes and follow and breathe in all that
It had its
healthy,
own smell.
all that healthy chemical.
And that
But
was
by
summer.
golly, any mosquitoes that were on us at the time did not survive that.
That's
but
right.
somehow we did.
But talk about seasons. That's summer.
Summer season.
The smell of the mosquito truck.
The mosquito trucks, yes.
And then it became Sunny South Exterminators. And Tom, our stepdad, worked at Sunny South Exterminators for years. I used to go over there and get a ride with Richard and Vicky Sinclair. Their mom would drive them to the middle school, and I would catch a ride. Every morning I go over there, Richard would have a container of milk and a whole bag of those powdered white donuts for breakfast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every morning. And then we would hop in there. They had a Bronco 2, a black Bronco 2 with orange and blue or orange and yellow striping on it. They would drive us to school. Then the Williams family lived right down there.
Yeah.
Remember? The Williams family and
Yep.
Robin's Nursery.
Robin's Nursery was there.
That was their original, Jess Robbins and his business, Robbins Nursery.
And the skating ring and the fair. You knew it was wintertime with the
That's right.
the fair was there, and the skating ring. Y'all remember the skating ring?
Eddie McConaughey was talking about that on the podcast over by the Phillips 66, the car wash.
Yes.
That's where they
which I
would set
worked-
that up. You and Vinny both worked at that.
Yeah, they're there. So there's a lot of good memories just growing up in Sebring, and we go on forever, but it was just good. We had got to tell the story about Ken Wilkinson. Ken Wilkinson was the first Republican county commissioner ever elected in Highlands County.
Keep talking.
So he had. So you gonna turn it a little bit?
Yeah.
So that's where Music Lane is. That was Koza's grocery store, and then became Wilkinson's Credit Bureau. And me, Charlie, Vinny, the houses, we'd go down there. We played wiffle ball, then hardball, and we would use Ken Wilkinson's air conditioning unit as the catcher, so we wouldn't have to run after the ball. And Ken would show up for work on Mondays, and that thing would be all deaded, and we'd hear it as, okay, we'll never do it again until the following weekend. We would do it again and do that all over again. But it was just pretty cool. Oh yeah, we had, I remember when City Hall was built. When City Hall was built up there, we used to play at Tuscarora Park. And that was really nice. And I remember there was just a lot to do back here.
Yeah.
And every neighborhood had the thing. I was talking to Trey Stevenson and Steve Marcourt, and they were talking about over where they lived out at Sebring Shores. They used to play football on the par 3 golf course.
Yes.
So that was their little experience in their neighborhood.
I don't know if you can confirm or deny this. Joe Gallimore, a good friend of ours, has told me a story several times about growing up not far from here and that family from New York who came down, and they live on that house in South Commerce Avenue. And if you go past that house, you got to cross the street, because if you go down the sidewalk in front of the house, they'll charge you a toll. Do you remember that?
Well, that probably would have been Charlie, because he's the one that knew more, that handled the money better than any of us and stuff like that. So that'd have been him.
Yeah.
and stuff. So anyway, so it's just good memories being here, and good memories of being so close to the circle. You know, this is South Commerce, right off this one of the 6 spokes of the circle.
Yeah. We're gonna go around back and take a quick look at the backyard. We'll be back in a minute. This episode of the Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.
We had a cool yard made just for playing in. Was good for lots of things, was good for anything. It was our playground, it was our ball field. Now it's a memory of life how it used to be.
All right, this is gonna be a little bit of a reenactment. So this was, like, as Peter was saying, this was part of our ball field. For me, this is training ground 101, where I learned how to play baseball, where I learned how to throw a football. So this is a really magic, special place for me personally. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but in the back room here, we had this really small piece of crap Magnus organ.
Yes.
And if you remember, most of the time, the routine was one of us had to play the national anthem on that organ. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Before we would come out and play home run derby or HR derby, someone had to play the national anthem, and then we would come out. Charlie was, we could all of us do this, but Charlie was always the MC. He was always the one who called what player was up to bat, who was pitching. If one of us hit it, you know, near the imaginary first base, he was
Charlie
the
would
play
make
caller.
the call. Vinny didn't play because he was uncoordinated. Very brilliant man, though.
Extremely brilliant, genius, literally, truthfully.
Yes.
But Charlie was the play caller for all sports. He knew every team, he knew every player, he knew every stat. So whenever one of us would come up to bat, he would name the player, name the team, name the stats, and we would play. So we had all these different rules. But to make a long story short, this is a version of a wiffle ball. It's not a true wiffle ball. We didn't like the wiffle balls. We played with the plastic baseballs. And you remember, after you hit them a few times, they get dented.
Yes.
So you hit it too hard. It's kind of like the Sandlot. You don't want to hit it over the fence.
Yes, because if we, that was tragic. If we hit over the fence, it was literally like Sandlot.
Yes. So you hit the ball too hard, it gets a big dent in it, and then you got to spend 10 minutes trying to massage it out. Then we figured out that they had a little hole in them, and you could put a bike pump in it. Remember that? And pop it out that way. What else do you think about when you're back here?
And just with and part of the reason why it was tragic, just like Sandlot, you know, in Sandlot they had the big dogs you had to run after. There was back behind the house, and the Batemans lived kind of back there, but over to if we hit it over that way, there was orange groves owned by an old German couple. Never knew their names. They were old. They were probably only 50 or something, but you know, back then when you're that big, they were old. And they would always yell at us if we went over there to get a ball.
Yeah.
And it was scary.
Yeah.
They were scary.
They were.
And they had that German accent, which made it scarier. So, nothing against Germans, because I'm part German, but you know.
I cannot confirm or deny this, but there were also, let's be honest, there were multiple times when people from this household or neighboring households across the street may or may not have gone out into the orange grove and grabbed oranges off the ground and thrown them and hit the house.
That could or not be confirmed.
So that may or may not have happened too. So maybe they had a right to be a little bit pissed. Possibly. I want to go back to the Batemans, but first we're going to do a little recreation. You see where that rock is? That's home plate. It's a little
home
too
plate.
far
Yes,
up,
it was.
Yeah, but it would have been back further. So anyway.
Real baseball bat, not a wiffle ball bat.
Yeah, it would have been. Do you remember the go-to bat, the yellow wiffle ball bat?
And we put the duct tape at the end.
Yes. Now the reason we put the duct tape was because it broke.
Yes.
We couldn't go get one.
It made it a good little swing.
It ended up being a front-loaded bat, and we also, just over time, it had a crook on the end of it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And if you caught it in that crook, you could hit it forever.
That's back in the days before Kmart. We had WT Grants.
That's right.
That's where you would get your stuff.
That's
But you
right.
didn't go out there all the time. It wasn't as. You got to remember, back in that day, there wasn't the retail explosion that there is, where you could get anything 24 hours a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
yeah,
So do you remember what a home run was?
yeah, it was over the. I don't remember.
Over the orange tree. So
Yes.
there was a,
Oh, that's right. We had the two orange
Shed.
trees where you had Frisbee the rooster.
that's right. There was a shed here and a little lean-to and then the chicken coop. And a home run was anything over the orange tree. So here we go.
Oh man, I ain't swung a bat in a while.
Vita Blue. No, Tom Seaver. Tom Seaver. That would be a man on first.
Man on first. So that was. I'm surprised I actually made contact.
You want another one?
Huh?
You want another one?
No. You know, you gotta know when to fold them, and when you hit it after one swing. So you need to
Oh yeah, I gotta hit one.
gotta hit one.
This was Charlie's go-to. You ready? In honor of Charlie.
Yeah.
Reginald Martinez Jackson. Mr. October.
He would do a left hand though, because he would.
Because he was
That's
a
okay, but the
purist.
cameras are this way.
Whoa, he was a purist. Don't whiff. Oh, that's
Oh, that's
gone.
a good one. Oh, hey, good thing your car you hit was your own. That's a good
true.
thing for that.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of memories here. A whole lot of really good memories.
Just before we go on and talk about Sebring and stuff like that, we got to talk about her mom. To just
Absolutely.
explain it.
Yep.
She was a legend.
Come up this way. There we go, right there.
Yeah. Our mom was married 7 times to 5 guys. She married the same guy twice on 2 different occasions. Her name was Helen Lanning, Asciutto, Danik, Dietz, Havery, back to Asciutto, back to Havery, and then Shoal.
Yes.
And she never got married to her high school sweetheart, but she lived the last 18 years of
Yeah.
happiness with them.
Art
Conklin.
Art Conklin.
And the interesting thing on that little switch when she went from Harry's dad to my dad and back to his dad, that took place from like November to February of a 3 month period.
Yes, that's right.
And we really don't know Harry's wife Dawn. She's trying to put together a family type tree spreadsheet of all this stuff, and somehow we can't find all the divorce papers. So she was a devout Catholic, but she might have been Mormon for a little bit of her life by just being married at 2 different at the same time
Yes.
twice. We just can't find the paperwork to prove
She
otherwise.
had a little blue metal container. One time we were over, and I think it was Dawn or Shirley, but we spread them all out on the floor. Were you there for that? Do you remember that?
Yes.
We spread them all out, beginning with the first marriage license or certificate, and then the separations, the divorces, and everything. And we tried to make everything chronological. And then Dawn turned that into a spreadsheet. But there were overlaps where there were marriages with no divorce papers or no separation papers. And then there was always the conversation between Mom and Father Ruiz about annulments and whatnot, because she was a good Catholic in good standing.
And she would go to church every day.
Every day.
Catholic church
She's at
every day,
Mass.
and got that communion
Yes,
every single day.
Every day. Yeah, she was devout, even if she didn't follow all the rules. Another one of her favorite rules was that during Lent, she always gave up sweets, except St. Patrick's Day, because that didn't count. And then she had other little.
There are those days that
excuses.
didn't quite count.
Yeah.
But it was great. And one thing about I'm currently finishing up Shameless on Showtime with the Gallagher household.
Yeah.
And if you watch that show, people are coming in and out, spending the night and doing all that stuff. That's kind of like it was here. Mom was so welcoming. It wasn't the crazy party stuff, but it was just, we had people in and out of the house all the time. Rose Solis,
Yes.
Gina Hines.
Yes.
People like that. Rose spent the night quite a bit.
Ingrid.
They were
Charity,
just
they were all Shirley's friends.
so many people coming in, and Vinny's friends and my friends, and
The,
Harry was
the
still.
Shannons, great athletes. They were here.
Yeah, Billy Joe Shannon
Billy
stopped
Joe and
by.
Robert. Yeah.
And it's just, then then we all grew up, and Harry had the place for himself. It didn't take him too long to take over the house after we all left.
It didn't take too long at all. And you know, those were special times. David Tavernier, Clark Patterson, Clark and David would be here every day. We ran around together, and we could go on for, you know, hours and hours about all the different things that we did back then. But really, truly magical growing up in downtown Sebring.
I got to tell you, with Shirley, can't say enough about her and her impact on our family and stuff like that. Especially, she's the one for years kept everything together. And when God, it's been 20 years since she's been gone, and it seems like just a good soul. So my mom, we kid about that, but we think she did pretty good raising her kids and grandkids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But she has legendary stories.
Oh, ain't no doubt about that. Yeah.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.
So this is our backyard, another view of it. But we had citrus trees back here.
Yep.
Legend has it, I don't know if this is true or not, but legend has it that my old man may or may not have gotten drunk and cut them down. I don't know.
He
if
may
that
have.
was
I don't know why, but it left a whole lot of hot sand back
a
here.
whole lot of hot sand.
That was a hot sand, man.
There was no irrigation at 618 South Commerce. There were little patches of bahia grass, but hot sand. But you played in it, you know, and it didn't matter. You didn't know any better. You didn't expect any more, and you were thankful and grateful for what you had. But I wanted to show you this because of how much it's changed. Right back here,
There were houses everywhere.
it was the Bateman's house. And do you remember Roy Bateman? And his wife was either Shirley or Cheryl.
One of those.
I can't remember. And the girls were Rhonda, Carla, and Teresa.
Yes.
And they were really my first playmates.
They were his age.
Yeah, Rhonda was a year older, Carla was a year younger, and Teresa was a couple years younger. But this whole thing was full of residential places. And this was the neighborhood to be in. It was an outstanding neighborhood.
And you had a couple blocks back is just amazing going up to Jeff Sawyer. Jeff Sawyer lived around the corner on Eucalyptus.
Yes.
And all that stuff, all those houses are gone. And you know, in the way you look at it, progress is progress.
Is the Sawyer's house bail bonds now?
I think, the bail bonds.
Yeah.
It's the bail bonds now. But all that is like no more residential.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nice. The other place we'd go up to the courthouse was always play up there. That was always nice with the big tree
Oh yeah.
in there. And then, and gotta tell you, the one little legend, Harry and Frisbee the rooster. There's a whole different story about that, but basically we had a rooster Frisbee. And what do you call that little thing? The claw?
Spurs.
The spurs would get spurs. But he had this Frisbee for how many years was it?
I don't even remember, but it was a lot of years.
And it would wake people up. I guess you're not supposed to have fowl in the city. And I remember one time, like Irvin Fordham, his grandma was Miss Parnell, and he was over there all the time, and Frisbee would get out. I remember one time, man, Irvin was helping us chase down that Frisbee the rooster, and it was jumping up and just attacking and stuff. And then there's more stories about Frisbee that's pretty funny. But when Frisbee actually died, there's a front page article in the Sebring News about, it was really pretty funny, about the rooster of...
Raucous rooster of South Commerce Avenue.
The raucous rooster of South Commerce Avenue passing away.
Yeah.
And it was the front page, bottom fold of the Sebring News. Funny story there.
And
then he had ducks, and the ducks would...
The
ducks would... It's probably a mile maybe to Lake Jackson. The ducks would go to Lake Jackson, like 6 of them, and they'd find their way back.
That's a little. We had 3. We had
3. Okay.
Well, no, you're right. At one point there were 5. I was cleaning out a tub of stuff, you know, my old memorabilia, and I found an admit to class. And this happened regularly. I looked at this admit to class, and it said reason for tardiness. Ask him about his ducks. So they would call, my mom would call the high school. She'd call Sebring High School and say, send Harry home, the ducks are loose and they're on the courthouse lawn again. So I would leave the high school, come back, go over to the courthouse, and the ducks would follow me back, Sometimes I had to corral them. They'd come back, I'd put them in their cage, I'd go back to school again. It was a whole different world back then. I could get out of class for going to get the ducks.
He used to get out of class for everything.
I kind of did.
But anyway, it's good times growing up. But things, you know, you hate to see things go, but progress happens and things change.
Progress. Yep. All right, moving right along.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.
Yeah, so playing hot box with the houses. I was substantially younger than you guys,
Very much so.
but I didn't feel so much like an outcast. You guys were pretty good to me about that. I know I must have been a pain in the ass,
It's like you were,
you know, being a little kid, tagging
yeah,
along.
we got old. We were older by then, though.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if you remember this, but there used to be tons of dragonflies out here,
yeah.
and used to try to catch them like with a towel or something. And bats, do you remember the bats? We used to try to hit the bats with baseballs and throw, and they would always be, they could dodge.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah. This is also where I learned to play tennis, hitting it against Ken's.
So yes, yeah.
And you also had that weighted yellow base with a string
Yeah, with the-
attached. Yeah, so we're standing right now playing catch in the back of Koza's grocery store. It was originally Sebring Fish Market. And the Koza's son had some health issues, so the doctor said you got to move him to a warmer climate, and they picked Sebring. Came down and opened Koza's grocery store. And I don't know if you remember this, and I don't know this firsthand, but Mom used to make sandwiches.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he would sell them for her.
That's right. Yeah, I do remember that.
And she also used to take in laundry. Remember
I
that?
remember she took laundry and she ironed.
Mom was always a hard worker.
She was, but she always wanted to stay home for
Yep.
the kids and be home when we got out of school.
Yep, and she found a way to do it. And she really didn't go back to work until I got to like 4th grade, and she got that job at Pizza Hut.
Yeah, but she only worked during lunches.
And as soon as Tom came along, she didn't have to work
Work it
anymore. So she did it. And she stayed home and,
Yeah.
you know, took care of housewife stuff, which was really cool. You know, go ahead.
I was going to tell you one more memory of us being in the backyard. I always think of it during football season when I watch how the Blue Streaks are doing and advancing toward the state. I think back to I think it was 1967. That's when Coach Odom was the coach.
Yep, the Bull of the Ridge.
You had Ralph McGill was the quarterback who went on to play professional football. And George Howes was on the team, and George was the guy that taught us how to play sports and stuff like that. And I remember they advanced through the playoffs that year. They were a super good team. And I remember they played Green Cove Springs. I always remember that because they got the little transistor radio. They played away. And in the backyard over there, I just listened to that game on transistor radio, the mighty Blue Streaks. And that's when they lost that game and went down. But, you know, that was a good memory. And you can see, you probably can't see from here, but heck, you can see the lights of the field behind it.
Yep, super good memories.
Yes.
On to the next stop. This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. Where did my childhood go? How did it fade so fast? Why can't I let it go? Why do I want it back? Yeah. We had a cool yard. Now it's a memory.
Mart Skipper Field.
Yes.
The
Great
iconic
place.
Marge Skipper Field.
Yes, which is basically a field right now.
That's all it is. You would never know that this was a ball field.
Oh, but that's one thing about memories. They live on forever.
Yes, they do. This
Brings me back to my days playing Dixie Youth Baseball here in Sebring, Florida. This was the field, this was actually the field before Max Long. And it was only about maybe 2 miles from our house, 2 or 3 miles from the house. And we had neighborhood fields back in the day. And the thing, if anyone thinks about Marge Skipper Field, I think of the Elks, playing for the Elks, Little League Baseball. I think of the Sebring News, where they write articles about the games. That's the good thing about small town newspapers. And do you remember the author of the articles? Former superintendent of Highlands County Schools, Ruth Handley.
She was the author.
Ruth Handley would write the sports articles for the Sebring News back in the day. So that was pretty cool.
She had her hand in so many different things.
Yes,
What an unbelievably well-rounded human being to be so involved and so passionate about so many things.
And I graduated with her sister, her daughter, Mary Ann.
Yes.
And Ruth Handley would be, this would have been in the 60s.
Yeah.
Late 60s, a female sports writer.
Yep.
Go figure. But that's one thing I remember about coming down here playing baseball. Robert Freeland was on the Lions. Me and Robert, we were kind of like always on different teams. We were good friends. And he was such a talent. He went on to play either at Mississippi or Mississippi State. But Robert played for the Lions. You had Ned Hancock. I remember playing against him on different teams. The fireman was always a big thing, with David Lanier being the pitcher. And people would say he was going to throw his arm out because he had a wicked curveball. And you know how when you're a kid, you look up to the elders?
Always.
Youth. Couple names that come into place out here is Buddy Yarbrough. Buddy Yarbrough. The Yarbroughs lived in that house over there. I believe that's that house over there. And if you look over to the right field, Buddy was a left-handed hitter. Man, as a younger kid, he was a few years older. You come out and you just watch him hit ball after ball over the fence into that sandy area over there. That was like the green wall in Boston. That was our little thing, the sand hill over there. I remember Reuter Rush. I remember one day Reuter Rush, he played for the Elks. He was a left-handed catcher. And I remember, we lost Reuter this year, which is sad. And I remember watching one game, hit one, the scoreboard was straight out center field. I remember him nailing one, hitting center field. Only a home run, other than in All-Stars afterwards, was against Adrian Toney. I remember Adrian Toney, man. I was 12. I think he was 10. He threw me a hanging curveball. That's my one home run. And the field was deeper here than it was at Max Long. I think it was 180 and then 210 or 220 in center field. And I remember hitting it over Joe DuBose's, our neighbors. I remember hitting it over his cars because people would just park out there in the outfield and watch us play. But it was really good times. I remember, though, Sebring being so flat, I hated riding my bike out here, even when I got older, and I would ride out here to go for rides on my yellow Schwinn Continental bike.
Oh, yes.
Because this little hill right here, I live in North Carolina where we have mountains. This was a mountain where you live in Florida, was the little hills out here in the area. What memories you got?
Well, when I started playing baseball, I was substantially younger than you guys. So I never played at Marge Skipper because Max Long had been built. But I did get dragged here, when you guys played your games. So I have memories of being a real little kid. But my Marge Skipper memories are from middle school. Coach Downing used to load us up on the bus.
Good old Butch Downing.
And he would drag us over here to play baseball or softball. And before you could pick up a bat or a glove or a ball, you had to run this thing. And the hill that you were talking about, that was like Death Hill. And you had to run it. And before the game, everybody wants to play ball. So everybody's, they're hauling ass. They want to play ball. Let's, then we had to run it again after we had just finished playing. And by that time, you're on the clock and we got to get back to school, So he had you hustling then too. But Coach Downing worked our tails off. And this was one of the places that he chose to do it. Now, we used to have combined PEs sometimes. So Coach Downing's class and Coach Whitney's class would combine. We didn't do that all the time, but sometimes we would. One time we came out here, we played baseball. It was so hot. And we got back on that bus. And there wasn't a kid on that bus who wasn't just already drenched with sweat. So and keep in mind,
were you wearing the white little stuff you had to change into, the white little...
Yes. But we didn't have our shirts on, you know, I mean, we took our shirts off. But that bus stunk so bad. Now, we get about halfway back, some kid threw up on the bus. And it already stunk because of all these, you know, preteen kids. And then when that kid threw up,
it started
a
chain reaction.
It started a chain reaction.
Oh my God.
I don't think anybody was ever happier to get off a bus than that busload of young men. Yeah. Coach Downing used this as a way to sharpen our skills in baseball and softball, but he also used it as a torture chamber.
Hey, he made man out of you.
Yeah. I've said it before. I've never been in better shape than when I walked out of 8th grade at Sebring Middle School from him. And, you know, they had great coaches. I had Coach Downing every year. And, you know, when Ralph died, Coach Downing took me aside. And Coach Downing's the only man who's ever told me my father was a good man. Ever. Yeah. And then he made a donation to Sheriff's Boys Ranch in Ralph's name.
He's a good man.
Class act. Coach Downing's a class act. But yeah, man, March Skipper Field. This is
where
iconic.
Oops.
Peter has proximity issues. He doesn't like to get too close, even though we're brothers.
Hey, and I'm just talking about around baseball and athletes. Jump into great athletes. We talk about Ralph McGill and George Howes. George Howes was phenomenal. Another left-handed hitter. And Buddy Yarbrough, I tell you, Buddy Yarbrough, he went on to play in the AAA in Florida, and he may have some records still here. I think he held the record for most triples or something in the Florida State League. But what a talent. I remember when I was in high school, it was Buddy's senior year. I remember Bertie Tebbetts, he was the scout for the New York Mets, came down to scout him and a guy from Avon Park. His last name was Williams. I remember Coach Rapp had me out there at Fireman's Field just shagging fly balls for them during the batting practice and stuff. And yeah, talking about Buddy was one of the best pure hitters that you'd ever want to see. Great talent, fantastic baseball player. A couple others come to mind. I remember Robert Shannon.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Shannon. After I graduated, I came back from school. I was watching a baseball game, and Coach Janita was there in the stands. I sat next to him, talking to him. We were talking about old days, and he was talking about the greatest athlete he ever coached, but he didn't really play sports in high school. Mm-hmm. But the most talented athlete he had ever seen was Robert Shannon. He said he could do anything. Had him for phys ed. They had golf one time. He picked up a golf club, never hit a golf club before. He was just hitting them in the field out at Sebring High. This is back in the day when they only had the 3 buildings and stuff. Yeah, Marge Skipper. I think they used to have, I'm sure they had the folks who lived in this. What was this called? This is called, what area is this called?
Highlands Homes.
The Highlands Homes area. And they had their own grocery store. Was L&M?
That's right.
Where they would have went shopping and stuff. I'm sure they had their own memories of growing up here, just like the kids over at Woodlawn.
Yep.
Played in that area and stuff like that.
Chad Home Sweet Sebring. Chad, you know Chad. He grew up in one of these.
Oh, that's right. I can't
remember which one, but this is his front yard or backyard, depending on where the house was. But
yeah, he would always post memories and childhood memories of growing up here. And a lot of times you hate to see the structures go, but as long as the memories and stories are told, they just live on.
Yep, that's right. And you mentioned the Yarbroughs. What an iconic Sebring family they are.
Oh yeah.
You talk about a family that's had their imprint on a whole community for decades. You've got to mention the Yarbroughs.
Yes, their dad, Floyd, was that the dad? Was
Yeah, Martha. Yep.
Great folks. Danny, phenomenal athlete too. Yep. He was a pretty good football player. He was stout and could get it done and stuff. And then they had others, but
Hunts and Kenny.
Hunt's, God. Hey, see, now he's jogging my brain for memories. Very, very talented family.
Yeah.
So Parks and Rec, I'm a big Parks and Rec guy. But he knows back in, those who don't know, I was a county commissioner up in Stanley County in North Carolina. And they put literally zero money into Parks and Recreation, which always frustrated me. So we put together a little program. But there's a value to being outdoors and congregating and being these parks. They help bring communities together.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, a whole town rallied around this place decades ago.
Yeah, the good thing, just like Tuscaloosa Park, which was up the street from where we grew up, I just remember how many times, like the little, what do you call it, the announcer's place and concession stand. I just remember jumping off the top, but not the total top, but
Sure.
jumping off that. I'm sure you did that at times.
Well,
And how we
Tuscaloosa was gone by the time I came.
but out here, I'm sure you jumped off you would jump off the little first layer there, and it's amazing we didn't break more.
It is
arms and legs. Surviving childhood.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's my whole little thing about surviving childhood. That people say when I was a kid, we got on the monkey bars, we did this, like that. But evidently, a lot of kids didn't get out of there safe, which is why they changed them around to make them safer and put the nice soft stuff in at the bottom so when they fall.
Oh, it's a.
But anyway, that's a whole new little thing there. But what else we got out here? This is just
man,
nice.
I'm just glad to be here. It's an iconic place.
Yeah, this would be a good. Thinking back, I don't know if they ever did it, but this little circle out here on the road, that'd be a good little bike race for kids, man.
It would be.
Do laps. It's a little bit of circle.
Probably 15 years ago or so, we did, me and Harrison and Rodney did a concert out here, a Christmas concert.
Really?
And we got a flatbed truck. Greg Griffin loaned us his flatbed and a generator. We set it up and we invited the whole neighborhood to come down. And I always thought this would be a really good concert venue right here to do a big outdoor festival of some kind. I think this would be a great place to do that.
They got the space. The fences.
They got the space.
The fences are gone.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. On to the next thing. Where are we going? We're going to one of the beaches.
One of the beaches. We're going to one of the beaches. Yeah. Either Crescent, Hidden, or City Pier.
Yep.
One of them.
Or
maybe
who knows?
Two.
Maybe all. Who knows? All right. We're out. We'll be back.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting. 863-385-5020.
Iconic Hidden Beach.
And one of those, we have had some swimming holes around here off of Lake Jackson. This is one of them. This is the iconic Hidden Beach. It's kind of pretty much mostly closed to the public. You do have to walk here, I guess, if you live in the neighborhood. But man, what memories, just outside the Indian streets. This is where a lot of folks swam. They swam here. We're at Crescent Beach.
That's right.
Where the folks in Snob Hollow swam, I guess, Veterans Beach.
Yeah.
And then you had a few other places, I'm sure, on Lake Sebring.
Dinner Lake Sebring.
Dinner Lake where people swim. But this was like the place to swim. My sister's City Pier was another place. Pier. But this is where when I got through high school and probably your high school days, where people came and swam. My sister Shirley, man, she lived down here during the summer times. And that's why Shirley had her suntans and music. That's all she needed was suntan and music. And some of my fond memories is just basically hanging out.
Yeah.
And Coach Gary Rapp, he was like the lifeguard here over the summer times. They used to have a lifeguard down here.
Yep.
And stuff. So what's some of your...
Well, just people, this was the place to hang out, and for me it was, especially when I was a kid, you would drag me along or Shirley would drag me along. Sometimes we got to bring the Bateman girls along, sometimes Clark and David would come along, but as a kid this was the place to be. And it used to be the City Pier because that's where Mom would take me. We would walk around that seawall and stuff, but this always seemed cooler to me because this seemed to be where all the teenagers were hanging out. And as a little kid,
it was hidden.
It was cool.
And we would ride our bikes. This was a little over 3 miles from our house. And it was a bike ride. It was nice. And he could probably show you later with the camera, but you come down a little hill, but riding back up that hill was not fun because you have to start from a cold start going up the hill. Wasn't that far in the big scheme of things, but in the summer things.
But that was a big hill, and it came all the way down. They've done some grading with it it's not how it used to be. There's a memory that comes to mind. I would like you to share that memory if you would. It's the only time
I may not remember
that I
this.
remember my brothers, we all would have
Oh, yeah.
arguments and stuff from time to time, but there was one time that they actually came to blows.
Yeah, I remember being down here one day. We would have those afternoon thunderstorms, and I was in high school, and I shared a room with Vinny, my brother Vinny, right there on the front. And I remember he was hanging out with Gary Gus, and they both had their little cars. Gary Gus had a little Volkswagen, and I forget what car Vinny was driving, but it was a little bigger one. And it started a downpour thunderstorm, and my big brother would not give me a damn ride home in his car and throw my bike in. He goes, no. So I remember biking home in that thunderstorm, and I go in that bedroom, and he was laying on the bed reading, and I didn't even say a word. I just jumped on there and started swinging away. That might be why earlier people wanted a toll to walk by our house. Man, I'd never been that mad at him in my life, man. I till to this day don't know why he didn't do that. It was just kind of a thing, but it's like, Vinny, you left me out there hanging, man, in the thunderstorm. And then when it gets a thunderstorm here, those afternoon showers, it comes down.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. They get intense down here. Something else that was intense, and this is just growing up in Sebring, but it was not at all uncommon to be out swimming, and there'd be cottonmouths, and same thing, water moccasin.
And you'd see occasional gators because they had a lot of the what do you call them, the shrubs or brush or whatever was out there, and that would grow, and you'd see gators out there.
Yep, and you just, you went about your business.
Yeah, you can see one come swimming, one of those cottonmouths just swimming right across in front of you. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of neat. They had a part out there, I guess, where they dredged it to build the beach.
Yeah.
You went out about maybe 10, 20 yards, and there was a big drop off.
Right there in the corner.
But there was a pole hanging from the bottom of it, like a little wood thing, like where there used to be a sign that was still hanging out in the water, so you could swim out there and stand on it, and you'd be just above the water, so you could go out the deep end and stuff. And it was, I remember the Beaumonts lived like 2 houses down. The Beaumont family, they are basically were some of the leaders in electronic car technology back in the 70s. They had a company called City Cars, and the Beaumonts lived there. They went to the Catholic Church. By the way, God rest the Pope. He passed away last night.
Yes.
Had nothing to do with us filming it. He just passed away. But, another reason I'm going to burn in hell.
Just one more reason.
But the Beaumonts, there was Steve Beaumont, there was Bobby Beaumont, there was Dina Beaumont. I think they had maybe some kids going down to your age.
Yeah, they did.
But they had a nice house there. But the City Cars, they were actually built out at the airport. And I remember the big news was they got a government contract with the post office, and they used them experimentally. And you could still find references to them online in the City Cars, and they were like established and kind of grown here from Sebring, Florida.
Yes.
So this is Hidden Beach. What a bunch of great memories down here, all the way through, basically all the way from me through middle school to even after high school.
Yeah.
And stuff. And what's somewhere you?
Well, this isn't specific to Hidden Beach, but it's kind of a Lake Jackson memory. You'll have to correct me on some of my details. Just down the road, maybe a quarter mile, half mile, that's where the Smoker family lived. Jeff and Greg, and was it just the two boys, or was there a sister?
Oh, Jeff, Craig. They had Kathy and Kim, and I think they had another one.
All right. Well,
Jeff and Greg, yeah.
Well, Jeff was my first guitar teacher from St. Catherine's. I remember one day, I don't know if it was you or Vinny or whoever it was, somebody came in the house and was all excited. Get in the car. We're going to Smoker's. So we get in the car, we go over to Smoker's house.
Which was next to the Hancock house.
Yes.
Ned Hancock and Cheney.
And we go climbing up a staircase, which, I don't know that I had really been in a house with a staircase at that point, other than maybe Auntie Pat's.
Yeah, they lived in one of those Spanish.
Yes,
old
beautiful,
Spanish
still
homes.
there, beautiful home. We get up to the top of the staircase and there's a bathroom. Go in the bathroom, and in the tub there's this alligator. Do you remember this?
It was not a little alligator.
No, it was about
this big,
gator.
3 foot gator.
Yeah. And
so Jeff, his guitar teacher, who taught him how to play guitar and help with him, decided to catch an alligator and keep it as a pet. Not a little one. It was a pretty substantial one.
As I recall, it was Jeff was in there, and he had a coat hanger with a piece of bologna on the end. And he was trying to feed that gator, you know, the bologna. Well, that gator lunged for the bologna, and it lunged right out of that tub. Do you remember?
I don't remember that.
And
that one
everybody went like tumbling out of the bathroom. But yeah, he had a live gator in the bathtub.
And this bologna story is not really a bologna story because it's actually a real story. It's a true real story that had bologna involved in the story.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, and just child. Everyone has these memories that are just wonderful. And go ahead.
Oh, well, just another few doors down is where the Bejors lived.
Yes.
And
Shirley babysitted.
Yes,
Shirley
yes.
babysitted for the Bejor kids.
yes, she did. And she would sometimes bring them over to our house, and sometimes she would bring me over there. But I got to play with those guys. You know, Chris, Peter, David, and Jonathan, and they all had the Star Wars toys like I had. They had the superheroes toys like I had. They had all Star Trek stuff that I didn't have. So Planet of the Apes, I had that, and they didn't have that. So I would load up my toys and bring them over to their house, or they would load up their toys and bring them over to our house. And they were a lot of fun to play with as a kid. They were great playmates as a young kid.
And one more smoker story. They moved. I think it was before Jeff graduated. They had moved. They moved somewhere in Alabama because their dad was in the grocery business and stuff, and they moved away. So I go to Troy State University in Troy, Alabama. I never forget my first day of class. I didn't know where the first class was. I thought it was on the other side of the building. So I come in late. It was Dr. Bowling. He was the old ambassador to Iran. And he was like the Middle East teacher and stuff. And still a professor. And I remember going to the one seat as they were passing around a paper to sign your name in. And the person taps me on the back and hands me the paper. I saw the name Jeff Smoker. Jeff Smoker had just went to Troy State. And he was sitting right behind me, and his family had moved to Dothan, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother Greg, hey Greg, if you're watching this, he's one of our class of 76 graduates, and he just loves Sebring, Florida. Greg, they only lived here for a few years,
Yes.
but that was that time when, your high school years, middle school years, that's just a special time in your lives where you make these great memories that you have for a lifetime. But Hidden Beach is one of those fine ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.
Hey, we're down here at the Ponderosa. The Ponderosa, I just found out the meaning of it. Back in the 60s, there's a guy, Roscoe Campbell. He owns 25 acres out here, and it's on the other side of the tracks, the Washington Heights area, to put it bluntly. And back in the day of segregation, the people of color had to stay on their side of the tracks, which is a sad part of American history. But Roscoe Campbell built a baseball field out here, kind of like his own Field of Dreams, and they were called the Ponderosa Raiders. And the Ponderosa, that's what they referred to. If you look at the area here, it had orange groves, and he raised buffalo out here. And according to Miss Blanche, she said that it was named after this area was named after Bonanza because they loved watching Bonanza. And it was kind of interesting there. And how I got involved with it, I played for the Ponderosa Raiders for one summer when I got home from college. I was working at Winn-Dixie, the one over there on Kenilworth. And Sylvester Lewis was the bread man for Sunbeam. And that was Blanche who lives over there. That's Blanche's brother. And unfortunately, she just told us that he passed away. He was a great guy last month. But Sylvester said, hey, you want to come out and play for Roscoe's? And I said, sure, why not? And I came out and it was just a wonderful experience. And if you look out here, this is a home plate. And there's still some evidence of the the game over here, you had the dugout. The dugout, what's left of one of the dugouts. And back there behind the trailer, here's a building. And what made that interesting, they were kind of like a quasi semi-pro team. They would play other teams from like Lakeland, Lewiston, places like that, and they'd come out on a Sunday. And it was semi-pro because you could make money. One way, if you were the pitcher, and we had young man Tommy Young, big Tommy Young. He was one of their star pitchers back then. And if you're the winning pitcher, you got like $10. If you hit a home run, you got $10, and you got $20 if the ball hit the top of that was the laborers' residence back there, that building. He'd give you a little extra money there. And it was quite the unique thing. It was more of like a gathering for the community. I remember I grew up playing baseball, and I remember if we had a 1 o'clock game time, that means you got there at 12:30, and you'd practice and you'd play at 1 o'clock. And this was like community events. If you played Lakeland at 1 o'clock, that meant you start showing up at 1 o'clock. And the fans start showing up from time to time, and then the other team eventually gets there. Then you play. I remember Art Owens, who umpired all those Little League baseball games for us, he would be the referee, and they would have 200 to 300 people out here on a Sunday afternoon watching games. And they had a cookout. Roscoe raised buffalo, so they would have buffalo burgers and stuff like that. It was just a very unique experience in the history of Sebring, Florida, and Highlands County. Now, one of the players that played for, legend has it that Hal McRae, who's Avon Park, played for the Ponderosa Raiders when he was younger. And then he went on to have a super career with the Cincinnati Reds, Kansas City Royals, and he ended up coaching, being a famous coach in Major League Baseball. But it's quiet out here. It's just beautiful, fond memories. And it was kind of interesting. Blanche was just telling us they had a fish fry out here the other night, and they had about 200 people. And she said they were talking about back in the day at the Ponderosa when people come out here for various events and stuff. And she said her uncle, I believe he was her uncle, Roscoe was her uncle, that he would have fireworks out here and something every single holiday for the community and stuff. So this is part of the rich history of Sebring, Florida. It was just a cool experience. And the groundskeepers were actually, the buffalo would graze in the field during the week to keep the grass down, and you would occasionally get those buffalo things out in the outfield. Played in the outfield. But anyway, this is one of those fond memories. And Donald Duck Taylor, man, I remember Donald Duck. He would be out here. He would be the announcer, have his music going on. We had like Alfred Pop Brown playing. You had, I know Billy Joe played for them for a while. You had John Dudley, Tommy Young, Ross Lewis, who was Roscoe's nephew. He played, and it was just a great time to play ball. And anyway, fond history of Sebring, Florida, right here at the Ponderosa.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.
Anybody want to guess our location?
Yes, we are in Florida. We've narrowed it down. We are at Highlands Hammock State Park, and we are on, what's the official name for this?
It's the catwalk.
Yeah, but the official name is called the Cypress Trail or something like that.
It's the catwalk.
But we know the locals know it as the catwalk. This is an iconic place. And, you know, Florida is a beautiful place, but this place, you talk about things that don't change. Thank God for parks and recreation and preservation. This basically would be Florida in the 20s, 30s, teens, just the way they end. You have a lot of cypress trees and you have alligators.
Yep. And you know what else you got? Horseflies.
There's a lot of horseflies flying around.
They're
right
on
now.
me. That's all good.
We didn't bring the bug spray and stuff. But this is a nice serene place out here. And Highlands Hammock State Park, I think off of the highway is, how was it, 3 miles or 4 miles off the highway, straight down. Beautiful park. And I talk about riding bikes. Used to ride my bike out here when we were kids.
It was a haul, but it was a good
probably
ride.
about 7 or 8 miles one way, but when you're young and you're used to being outside, it just wasn't that big of a deal. And the only noise out here is me chattering. But man, it's just beautiful out here. What are some of your memories?
Do you remember the drill coming out here? Do you remember what we used to do?
Do you have to remind me of that one?
So we would come out. Sometimes we'd bring food, but we always had to stop at it's the Circle K now. And I don't know if it was a Circle K or a Shop and Go back then or what it was, but I don't know. That I can't tell, but we used to stop and get marshmallows. And what were the marshmallows for?
Oh, to feed the gators?
Feed the gators.
Which we didn't know better back then.
Back then it wasn't a thing, you know, it just, you brought food and you brought your picnic stuff and you saved your leftovers, or you stopped and bought marshmallows. There was always a gator right here, a great big one, and he was, as far as I know, blind, and his eyes were messed up. But you drop in a marshmallow and he could grab that thing.
That's right. He was blind, his eyes were messed up, and he couldn't see either. So,
thanks for that.
No, but if you go out here, you usually find gators. I think one time I came, they had hatched some. There were 6 or 7 baby gators.
That's usually a spot where the babies are, right around in there. It's in the spring. It's always a good area to find them.
But he may get some shots later. But they have so many activities out here. California Toe Jam and the band, they play music in the park out here at Highlands Hammock State Park. They have like weekly over the wintertime.
Monthly.
Monthly,
Yeah, but probably 20 years we've been doing that.
Monthly festivals
pretty close
and stuff.
to that. Hey, y'all can come on out here. We're just doing this. Don't worry about us.
So anyway.
Look at all these things.
I know.
Yeah, we're trying not to interfere too much.
Yeah, they got it closed off. They're doing repairs right now, or else we'd go down further and stuff. Where you guys from? Okay. Yeah, I grew up here. He's from here. Beautiful place.
Okay.
Lake Placid? Okay.
You're Green Dragons. I guess that's okay.
Go Green Dragons. But anyways, just beautiful out here, and it had a lot of childhood memories. And so if you get a chance, if you're coming down for HGTV to see Sebring, come on out to Highlands Hammock State Park. It's just beautiful, and this will show you what old Florida was. And what's interesting is the kind of like what they call it, marshland or hammock land, is this was all around the area. Now they have a lot of houses there, so they've had to change things around, and water's got to flow certain ways and stuff. But this is old Florida out here.
Yeah, don't come to Sebring and miss this. This is a gem. This is one of the crown jewels of this whole area, Highlands Hammock State Park.
Thanks.
Yep.
This episode of The Havery Show is being brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020. Yesterday was a good day, today's a good day, tomorrow's gonna be a good day too. Yesterday was a new day, today's a new day, tomorrow's gonna be a new day too. Get out of bed with your feet running, open up a window now and let some sun in. Life's way too busy, got to let some fun in. Come on and get your game on, today's a new day. cappuccino at the 7-Eleven. Open up your mind to the ways of heaven. 43 and 1831 plus 7. Come on and get your head on straight. Today's a new day. Get out of bed with your feet running. Open up a window now and let some sun in. Life's way too busy, got to let some fun in. Come on and get your game on. Today's a new day. Yesterday was a good day. Today's a good day. Tomorrow's gonna be a good day too. Yesterday was a new day. Today's a new day. Tomorrow's gonna be a new day too. Yesterday was a good day. Today's a good day. Tomorrow's gonna be a good day too. Yesterday was a new day. Today's a new day. Tomorrow's gonna be a new day too. This is gonna be a good day. This is gonna be a good day. This is gonna be a good day. This is gonna be a good day.
The Havery Show has been brought to you by Heartland Tax and Accounting, 863-385-5020.